Hello there, I'm Mariam Saab. Welcome to this edition of Eye on Africa tonight. From sports stardom to the post of president, a France 24 exclusive report. Our team speaks to George Weah in Monrovia ahead of his historic inauguration, marking Liberia's first peaceful transfer of power in decades. An ambulance service in Somalia is offering free first aid classes in a bid to bolster rescue missions and help citizens pick up the pieces in the aftermath of terrorist attacks. And on a more colourful note, from strutting their stuff on runways to dressing the who's who of entertainment, African designers and models are taking fashion by storm. We go behind the glitz and the glam. But first, Liberia is on the cusp of its first democratic transition in over 70 years. Outgoing President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is preparing to hand over power to former football star George Weah on Monday. Now, she stands accused of meddling in last year's presidential elections, a charge that prompted her expulsion from the ruling Unity Party. Now, this after Weah defeated its candidate Joseph Boakai in a landslide victory, winning around 61% of the vote on the strength of a campaign promising economic revival. Well, to Monrovia now, where France 24's Norris, Trent and Sylvain Rousseau spoke to the president-elect about what's to come.
Monrovia's central mosque particularly packed out at prayer time. Joining the worshippers are some very special guests. Liberia's president-elect George Weah and outgoing leader Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. A show of unity ahead of the first peaceful transfer of power here in decades.
Our new Liberia is for all of us to participate to make it grow. Every discipline in the world, there's expectation. I remember when I went to professional field, there was expectation. No one knew I was going to be the best footballer, but I did. But there are expectations, but we'll keep talking to our people. We are inheriting government that are devastated by Ebola, and other diseases, and we now want to invite our friends, business people, who want to be open for business, so all of the things can be put in motion.
As with all his public appearances, an elated crowd has turned out to witness this symbolic visit to Liberia's Muslim community. Weah's supporters are desperately hoping the former football star can bring about change.
He want press control. He must control the press.
We on the street, no work. So we're asking the president, Ali, can find place for all. Ali will be working.
During the election campaign, George Weah emphasised what he termed pro-poor policies and paints himself as a man of the people. As president, one of his main tasks will be keeping those pledges.
France 24's Norris, Trent and Sylvain Rousseau reporting there from Liberia. Next, Uganda could start enforcing the death penalty again 13 years after the country's last execution. President Yoweri Museveni tweeted on Thursday that he's been reluctant to sign off on hanging those convicted because of his Christian beliefs, but that being lenient has led to people to think that they can cause harm and get away with it. Well, he's now changing his tune in the fate of some 278 people currently on death row. Rights groups have condemned the move, arguing that it won't reverse Uganda's rising crime rate, rather that more resources should be poured into policing. Let's hear from one of those critics now, Livingston Shonwanyana, the director of Human Rights Initiative.
We're actually extremely shocked by what the president said, considering that he has not executed anyone since 2003. And of course, we are aware that Uganda was really moving towards abolition, because we are among the countries that are actually considered to be de facto abolitionists.
Well, let's now move on to some other news from the continent now. A school run by Al-Shabaab was stormed by Somali forces on Thursday night. 32 children taken as recruits by the Islamist militant group were rescued. Al-Shabaab claimed that the government attacked the school in the Middle Shabelle region, killing 4 children and a teacher. Allegations refuted by the state, who said no children were killed in the operation. A report released by Human Rights Watch claims that Al-Shabaab has been ordering rural community leaders to hand over hundreds of children as young as 8 since September. Well, staying in Somalia, first aid classes are now being offered to nationals by the country's only free ambulance service. The aim is to help improve rescue missions and empower citizens to act in the aftermath of accidents and terrorist attacks. Simon Harding reports.
Learning how to provide basic medical care. An initiative has been launched by Amin Ambulance, Somalia's only free ambulance service, providing free first aid classes to any Somali who wishes to participate in the program. Its purpose is to improve rescue missions in the East African country.
Explosions and accidents can happen at any time, and it can happen wherever and whenever. And we don't know when it will happen. So that we decided to start this kind of first aid training, so everyone will get the advantage of it.
The classes are held at Mogadishu University and are funded in part by the government, but more importantly by medical students and local businesses. Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, has been marred by conflict since 1991 and is often targeted by Al-Shabaab militants. Large sections of the course are devoted to treating terrorist attack scenarios, including blasts and gunshots. Ongoing violence in the city and a feeling of helplessness has pushed most volunteers to sign up.
The reason I enrolled for first aid training is that I saw a girl getting burned after an explosion and I didn't know how to help her, so I decided to take lessons to educate myself.
It's necessary for everyone who lives in Somalia, especially Mogadishu, to take first aid training because our country is always in crisis and it's important to help people when needed.
The training course takes approximately 1 month to complete. Over 150 people have taken part in the initiative. Once completed, they are rewarded with an official certificate.
Simon Harding with that report there. Next to Ivory Coast, where former Defence Chief Mui's leader Kouassi has been sentenced to 15 years, the latest top aide of ex-President Laurent Gbagbo to be jailed. A court in Abidjan convicted Kouassi alongside 3 other defendants of conspiring against Gbagbo's successor. Now, Gbagbo was ousted after months of violence sparked by his refusal to step down when rival Alassane Ouattara won the election in 2010. Kouassi's defence lawyer claims that his conviction is about settling an old score with the disgraced former leader. Have a listen.
He was a close associate of President Laurent Gbagbo, and I think that has played against him. As my young colleague said, this trial had no other goal than to settle a score with Laurent Gbagbo, but by targeting leader Kouassi instead.
Well, let's now stay in Ivory Coast, but move from the courthouse to the catwalk. As African designers begin to gain more global recognition, models from the continent are also finding their feet on the world's most watched runways. In Ivory Coast, modelling agencies are building on this momentum by nurturing new homegrown talent. Robert Satin-Maddox has more on this story.
At this modelling agency in Abidjan, trainees paid €23 a month to learn to walk like a model, a stepping stone, they hope, to a career in fashion.
For me, modelling is a job like any other. You can make a living out of modelling as with any other job. I'm hoping to become an international supermodel one day.
African capitals are increasingly hosting their own fashion shows, attracting international audiences. And last year was the first time that a quarter of models at the spring shows in New York, Paris, London and Milan were not white. But despite the growth in African fashion, it's still not easy. When it comes to haute couture, Western sizing standards still dominate.
We've started to align ourselves with European standards of physical and beauty criteria. When you look carefully, the models, they're very thin, they're skinny. But you see African women in general are more curvy. So that means that we're making these choices precisely because we're responding to the international market.
But there are signs of change in the industry. The first black editor of British Vogue, Edward Enninful, has said he wants a magazine for all sizes and races. For these models in the Ivory Coast, a bright future awaits.
And finally, under the blazing Ethiopian sun, a procession carrying a replica of the Ark of the Covenant marched through the streets of the capital, Addis Ababa, sending believers to their knees. Now, the occasion was the annual Timkat, the local Orthodox Church's celebration of Jesus Christ's baptism. The event, which began on Thursday and concludes this Friday evening, is the next best thing to Christmas in the eyes of the church. We'll leave you with these images. Do stay with us. Eye on Africa is up, but there's more news coming up here on France 24.
Down to Earth, presented by Merid Dundas.
The Arctic is going to be exploited, and the scale of this exploitation will only grow.
We have a beautiful planet, we need to protect it, and we can use space exploration to better understand it.
Now we've moved from, is that real, to what do we do about it?
Join us on Down to Earth as we explore the incredibly complex relationship between humans and our planet. We're here to ask the difficult questions and find answers that may just surprise you.
Down to Earth on France 24 and France24.com.